everyday tech pack.
Well, it's crazy how much everything has changed because I used to travel like every other week. So I would never actually be home. So I would edit everything off of an external drive and my MacBook and like my iPhone. Like that was my to-go kit, like everything. But now I've been using my iPad so much more, just like around the house, just to do like emails and just, I don't know, just like consume content. It just drives me crazy that there's no Instagram app on the iPad. Like just this drives me crazy. Like, why don't you just make an app that works on the iPad? But I've been using the iPad so much more. And like now, I mean, I'm obviously editing a lot just on the Mac Pro. And then the iMac Pro is what I've been using for like my gaming and whole streaming setup. So it's weird just being at home and seeing everything kind of shift and change as to like what you use. I mean, I feel like you used to travel a lot as well too. So like, how has that kind of shifted for you?
So in my case, I was 22 last year, so I was thinking like I'll just go on every single trip that I can go, and usually I'll bring a friend to help video and photo and just like kind of enjoy that a little bit. But it did get to the point where I think it was almost 100 flights a year, and it's because I live on an island in Canada, so I got to take that 8-minute flight to get over to the main airport and then all that. And then I always like had like flight delays, and it would either be like we'd be in Switzerland one week, and then they would say, oh, you want to come to Japan the week after, and it was a lot of fun. But when it's all like one after another, it's hard to really appreciate it until we were at home for however many months. And now I felt like the past couple months I've really been able to try to figure out the workflow and sort things out, and even switching to new software like productivity software such as Notion, starting to use Slack for the first time, which I never really used for, like same with notes, and trying to figure out how we can improve our editing and those kind of things. One thing I noticed that I started using much more is same as in your case, the iPad. I used to, so the problem before, or not really a problem, but it was when we were traveling, we would need a computer to do certain things, even if they weren't too complex. Like photo editing was just a little bit easier, in my opinion, on the computer. So we would have a 13-inch like MacBook Air or a smaller MacBook, a 16-inch for editing that would almost never travel. I tried to always edit at home, and because our trips were usually like 2-3 days, and then we'd come back just in case we have to go somewhere else. And the iPad was only like an iPad Pro being used for Netflix is a bit ridiculous. But as a tech reviewer, you want to have the latest to be able to test apps and do that sort of stuff. But it wasn't until the release of the Magic Keyboard that I started using it as like an actual computer. And it's because muscle memory on the iMac and the MacBooks was all like registered that I couldn't really type well on the smart keyboard. So I feel like with the release of this keyboard, and I think it looks pretty cool, even standalone, it's turned it into something that I use every day. And I think what I like about it is that it lets you focus on one task a bit more. Whereas on the computer, you've got this 30+ inch display and you have like 50 tabs open. You got your Final Cut, your email, things popping up all over. Whereas on the iPad, you have 1 to 2 things at a time.
No, and it's completely just so overwhelming, I feel like, when you're on the computer, because you really can be doing so many different things.
Yeah.
But what I was interested in when I first got the iPad is Apple was talking about all the things that you can do, which getting the iPad was my inspiration for starting a podcast, because that was one of their little things that they were like, you can start a podcast on the iPad. I was like, well, I have an iPad, I guess I'll start a podcast. So like we kind of recorded it. My sister and I both recorded into the iPad with, we have these hype mics, which just have like, they go right into the USB-C port, and it just automatically recognizes it. And it has like different compression settings too. So you just like push a button and everything sounds perfect. So I was like, let's just make a podcast on the iPad. And we did. And then I was like, well, maybe I wonder if I can actually edit a whole video if the iPad was all I have. And then I edited like a 15 minute vlog that I shot on my iPhone. And it was amazing because all of that footage that I shot on my iPhone automatically synced to iCloud. It was already on my iPad, and I just started editing. I was like, this is pretty great. And there's so many different things that they're making with the iPad that make it easy to transfer footage, like the Narbox. Have you ever used that before?
I've heard about it, yeah.
It's pretty cool. So it's basically just a hard drive that you can either wirelessly connect or use USB-C to connect to it. And then you can just transport footage off of it, import it directly into LumaFusion. And editing on the iPad, I thought that they were going to announce Final Cut for iPad.
I did as well. I had a sense of it. I was like, are they going to announce it? But yeah, LumaFusion actually does work pretty well, and it has a lot of the same characteristics as iMovie and Final Cut. A lot of my film friends, when we do like collaborative projects, the pain is that they use Premiere, and I've never used Premiere. I grew up with an iMovie and Final Cut sort of thing, so it's like I literally could not switch to Premiere if I had to. But yeah, LumaFusion actually worked quite well. You were able to color grade. We put like so many footage on there, and it was all able to handle it perfectly fine. But obviously with like depending on the setup, the storage and everything starts to get a little bit more complicated with files and everything. But if it had to be done, it is 100% doable. And especially for like iPhone vloggers, airdropping it to your iPad and starting to edit right away is something that is unbeatable for the size.
It's so great. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. Like, will we be able to edit off of, like an external drive? I also have a Jellyfish server, which is really cool because you can also
really
connect that to your iPad. It's pretty awesome. I'm almost full, so I'm going to have to upgrade it. But you can connect that to your iPad as well and edit directly off of there. It's just like the future is going to be really interesting, especially I'm just so interested in like the kids right now, like the gear that they're getting. Like there's people that are only getting an iPad. Like that is their only device.
Yeah,
that's what they're learning to edit on. So they don't know anything other than I edit on LumaFusion now. So it's like their efficiency in that app would be, us with Final Cut.
Yeah, it's funny to see the generation of people nowadays. So I was born in '97. So
oh my God,
when the iPhone came out, I was 10, and at the time nobody was getting an iPhone at my age because it was just expensive. And then the first time I started seeing people have like phones was I think around grade 4, and then smartphones around like middle to high school. I was actually one of the last people in my grades to get a smartphone. My parents, Asian parents, they got me a little flip phone, hand me down. It could only call 3 numbers, didn't have texting or anything. So the iPod Touch was like my first like real device that was like the central hub. But then nowadays people are like, there's a phone now that is made by Apple that is $399. If my kid needs a first phone at age 10, maybe even younger. I don't know what the norm is nowadays. For $399, it's relatively foolproof for a phone that is outright. Because back then, if you dropped your iPhone, that thing's on a 3-year contract. At least in Canada, the 3-year contracts were very expensive. You'd be looking at like the thousands for a phone, and even with the flagships, it still is. So it's kind of I think the moment, like the generation of applications where I felt a little bit old, even for my age, was trying to use TikTok for the first time. I literally had no idea how to navigate any of it. Because I was used to like Instagram, email, and when I was using TikTok, it was almost like my parents trying to use social media.
That was like me trying to figure out Twitch for the first time because
that looks
it's like I
complicated
streamed
as well.
On Justin TV, which was before Twitch was ever something. So that
I
was
remember
like
that
13 years ago.
The name
so
of
like
that.
my Twitch account is older than half of the people watching some of the videos, which is crazy. So, but it was like, I did this so long ago and everything was so different, just logging back in. And I think what Twitch has done sort of as a community with all of their really cool features, like they have all these things where you can like gift subs to people. And it's just this whole other ecosystem that I just was not even aware of.
Yeah.
Because I was just, after streaming for so long before, I was like, I never want to do that again. But I think in quarantine, without traveling and being able to have like that connection with people, I feel like this is such a great alternative because a lot of these people aren't able to connect with people. So it's like we can actually have those conversations. So it's interesting to see where live is going. And even TikTok, I mean, it does feel like a generation thing, but I've had so much fun making TikToks, just being stupid and silly. Like it kind of takes you back to the original days of YouTube. Yeah, a lot less pressure.
Yeah.
But then, of course, I think like anything, I start overthinking it. I'm like, okay, well, how can I make my TikToks better? I'm like, stop thinking, just have fun.
Yeah, how like everything's done on a phone, whereas like coming from YouTube and stuff, we always want to overproduce, like, oh, I use a camera for that and this and that, color graded a little bit sort of thing. I'd say I'm a consumer of TikTok. I tried doing a few of them. It's just too many platforms to manage at this point. I even got rid of Snapchat and just started using Instagram stories. And I find that tying that all together is much more easier to manage aspect ratios and all that stuff, especially at a live event, trying to do like Twitter at 16:9, Instagram at that, photo, video, this and that, cameras all over the place or running around. CES was that one. I think last year was one. We both did the Samsung TV. That
was
month
crazy.
That week was crazy. It was a lot of fun, but it was definitely a lot of running around and everything. But it's funny you mentioned sorry.
Oh, no, I was just asked, do you think you'll go to CES next year?
It depends. It's like a year by year basis. I know America's situation is much different than Canada. So chances are like based on right now, it's probably going to be a no. But the media I find in the US definitely drives the narrative of what's really going on. Like right now, coronavirus I'm seeing like peak number of cases in the US, whereas in Canada, I don't really see any of the news anymore. as opposed to where it was like 2 or 3 months ago, where all it was
Yeah.
was coronavirus and everything. In Victoria, we haven't had a case, I think, in 6 weeks. So
That's amazing.
it's Canada's definitely done a better job, but Canada relies on the US a lot. So whatever we do here, we base on what's going on down there. So for now, the border's closed. Nobody's traveling or anything. So yeah, it's hard to say. I usually try to spend as little time on the show floor just because it's a lot of the stuff is just outside of it and you go where you need to. And
Yeah.
other than that, we just want to like go hang out. Like that one year, I think just like went to go tour around and go drive some cars, go to a hockey game. You're a Penguins
That's
fan,
fun.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I used to be so much more into sports, but it just as the years went away, and I feel like if I were to choose a team, yes, the Penguins fan.
Yeah.
So
At least you guys have a
but-
couple Stanley Cups to celebrate. The
We do,
Canucks
which is
still
good.
are waiting for their first one. They almost did it in 2011, but I remember I was in grade 8 grad, and that was the first time anybody seen me cry because they lost in Game
my
7 of the
gosh.
finals. So that was people probably still remember that from that class.